Hi guys, welcome to my presentation. This is my week 5 multimedia discussion board on the effects of Marbury versus Madison. So I'll just be going over some of the impacts of the case, what's the background and the significant aspects of it were, and how that affects government today. So from my understanding, Marbury versus Madison started with John Adams, who was President of the United States at the time. Before he actually left office, he appointed a number of new judges, to be exact, 16 circuit judges and 42 justices of the peace, including William Marbury. I think his goal was to complete the appointees of all of them before Thomas Jefferson actually took office, and I assume that it had something to do with the Federalist and Democratic Party at the time, who had very different goals of what government should be like. However, once Thomas Jefferson actually took office, he basically put a stop to any more of the new judge appointees. Because William Marbury was one of them, he took the case to the Supreme Court, stating that he should have been he should have received his new position because he was appointed by the current president or the previous president. This set the stage for the Supreme Court to get involved and basically established what we know as judicial review. They did review several different sides of the case, which was William Marbury's side, stating that he should have gotten his position. However, because it ultimately came down to what was in the Constitution, what was legal based on the Constitution at that time, and because it wasn't, this forced the Supreme Court to focus on the two conflicting sides of certain cases that could bring up conflict between laws that are passed by Congress and what is ultimately constitutional. In doing so, they established judicial review, which allows them to say that ultimately the Constitution is the law of the land, and in this case, although he had good reason in which he should have gotten his position, it was deemed as unconstitutional, and ultimately he did not. So the way I see judicial review is that the Supreme Court acts as the unbiased opinion in what is ultimately legal, what is ultimately constitutional based on the Constitution, even though there are certain laws that Congress would like to pass. A lot of times there might be cases like Marbury versus Madison, which have to be deciphered between. And I think this set the precedent that the Constitution is the law of the land, and it was their job to review cases that would determine that. So how that affects us today was interesting to see that it has judicial review establish a number of cases that everyone's familiar with. It established the biggest one that I've seen, it is established a right to privacy in cases like the Board of Education and the Independent School District versus Earls in 2002, which established that students who are in extracurricular activities would be subject to random drug testing. Other cases like Mapp versus Ohio, which are older but were deciding cases for how we actually conduct law, or how law enforcement conducts its actions today. How this affects society is that as a result, society does have a certain aspect of privacy because of these cases. So I do think it was very important. If I could have changed anything or how I would apply that to the 21st century, I would say that I wouldn't necessarily change anything about it, but I think that it did create a significant expectation of what privacy and specific rights are in terms of like how that differs from civil liberties. Just because it's not stated in the Constitution doesn't necessarily mean that it's not interpreted as a right. And so I do think the judicial review is important and also in that aspect in interpreting the Constitution in that way. So that's the end of my slideshow. I've talked about the impact of Marbury versus Madison, the background of the case, and some of the influence it has today. Thank you.